deontology or utilitarianism? Both. Both wouldn't be possible actually. One is inconsistent with the other.
Somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between, okay. So is the idea?
Idea is deontology. Okay. So, and applies to everybody, so utilitarianism is also there. So, both.
Okay.
The idea is deontology. You had a good intention to pass on knowledge, to give a good presentation, conduct a good Gyan course, with a rich content and rich material.
Okay. So,
The intention is good.
Hmm?
Intention is good. The consequences you have to wait for the
okay. Which is specifically with regard to this course. Okay.
So intentions also are right.
Intentions?
Intentions also are right. Depends on perspective, right? I mean, what might be a good intention to you might not be a good intention to me. Also, there is also that perspective that comes in, the dilemma that comes in. I mean, like throughout the history, right? Like, I mean, it kind of like happened over and over again. I mean, even take an East India Company for an example, right? When East India Company colonized like India, right? Their intention was to like boost the EBITDA of like their company. Intention is good, but I mean, like we kind of provoked against it. Our intention is also good. The problem is, I mean, intention is also a little subjective, right? I mean, like what might be a good intent for you might not be a good intent for me, basically. So,
Okay.
therein lies the. I mean, it has been repeating over and over again throughout the centuries, right? So.
Okay. Yes. So intentions can be from or considering which intentions are good.
Correct.
That might vary from person to person.
And also one thing also, right? Intention also is really an intrinsic feeling as well. Intrinsic feeling as well. Intention. I mean, you always have. I mean, like Sir said, right? I mean, like it is without any like self-rewarding mechanism, right? I mean, the intentions also are a little bit problematic there as well. So.
Okay. So it's like, I mean, somehow the reward part should come together with the.
No. I'm not saying that, right? I mean, see, like you have to trust the process. I mean, like whatever you're doing, right? I mean, like in terms of your morality, right? You have to trust the process and carry on. I mean, result doesn't matter. Result doesn't matter. But the problem with intentions, I mean, just intentions, right? What may be correct to me might not be correct to you. Yeah. Even from an intention perspective, I'm not even talking about actions, right? Just from an intention perspective, I might have meant respect to you, right? But you might have easily perceived it as a disrespect from an intention perspective.
Okay. Yeah, so the variations in intentions, yeah. I mean, yes. Not the variations in the intentions, the variation in the considering which intentions are
correct.
Might, yeah, that is possible. Yes. Anybody else? So that's why now to explain the morality of certain things, now the deontologist has to fix on some right intention. So you can have different, people can have variations among intentions, but what would be the right intention? he would say, you are performing certain action just for the sake of performing it, irrespective of yeah. So that's the intention I have. So irrespective of what effect that that particular action will have, irrespective of that, and perform a particular action. So yeah, so two different frameworks. Now, yeah, how to bring it to this speech processing scenario. That's one thing. Okay, so so here, would I be right in saying this? So if any speech technology, is heavily dependent on some speech processing. Speech, would I be right in saying that? Basically the functioning of speech technology would be dependent on some speech processing. So then, yeah, so we can think of at least these different three stages in the speech processing. I don't know about the speech process, so I think if I'm making any mistake, yeah, you should be correct. so first input, second processing, and then output. So yeah, minimally I think we could say this. So first, there's something called input stage, the collection of the data which are in the form of spoken items of a given speaker. So that could be regarded as the first stage, where the data is collected. Right? So maybe the acquisition of data, speech data. And maybe I would also be right in saying that this speech data can go through at least different three stages. First input, then processing, and how the processed speech is being released for some purpose. So yeah, the second stage, the processing stage, the manipulation of the collected speech through someone synthesizing the data. Now, I don't know what is happening within that with very, very, very minimal understanding. And I'm not sure whether I'm wrong in making this particular claim also. Okay. So the second processing stage, anyway, processing should happen through some synthesizing, but I don't know what would be that. Then after the processing, the third stage, the processed speech, you can't keep it idle. But it is for certain purpose. It might be released to some people. Right? So if there is anything wrong in that, we should point it out. Yeah. So yeah, third output stage, what results from the speech processing phenomenon. The processed speech or spoken item reaching a modulator, making an impact. So now, processed speech goes out and presently hits somebody and it makes an impact. Right? So, so this much I think should be all right to say about the speech processing phenomenon. So these three different stages. Now, each stage we could see each stage as having some progression. with some agent. So input module stage as having some relation with some more agent, some specific relation. Then similarly, with regard to the output, we could say that this particular module or stage is having some relation with some model. Now, what that relation? I mean, we don't, but it is a relation. Maybe in the input stage, if my speech data is collected, then through some mechanism, then between that and me, some relation could be thought of, in the sense that it is my speech which is being collected. Hope that is also fine. That claim also is okay. Then suppose after processing, if the speech item, I mean, assume that I am the moral agent, and that released speech is making some impact on me, then I mean, there is some kind of a relation between this particular output module or stage and me. I mean, some relation I could feel of. So now, if we have this, then I can just make a very trivial point. The claim is very trivial, and that is the output. We can have output confined relation and input confined ethical problem. So output confined ethical problem and input confined ethical problem. Now under the input confined ethical problem, the collection of the speech data becomes a relevant ethical issue. Now under the output confined relation or ethical problem, maybe the kind of impact that the released speech has on me, what it forces me to do. Right? So that have some ethical concerns. So we can generally, so I could say this, that the way the input confined relation impacts a moral agent is different from the way output confined relation impacts a moral agent. So the consistent and frequent when the speech, when the released speech data has an effect on me. I mean, whether it will alter my behavior or not. Now, it can be considered as an ethical, I mean, at least some kind of ethical concern that one could think of. Okay. So, yeah. Now how to, one of the ways to justify the collection of, I mean, the entire working mechanism of speech processing, maybe accepting some teleological explanation, saying that the speech data is collected, processed, and released to satisfy some purpose. Right? So, yeah, the certain speech data is collected for some purpose or goal. So, maybe the purpose is to just satisfy some human requirements. Right? Now, that's a way to justify. Maybe one of the ways to justify the collection of speech data. Right? But one could think of this teleological path. So, speech data is collected, Now it is processed and it is released for certain purpose. Okay.
Sorry, what is teleology? I mean, I've never heard this term.
Which one? Teleology.
Teleology.
Teleology is like I'm explaining certain things in terms of a purpose.
Purpose.
Okay. So how do I mean, speech, collection of speech data itself is problematic. I mean, it has some ethical concerns here. Now, how would I be able to justify, give a moral justification for the collection of the speech data? So, I mean, that privacy concern is just one among. There could be other issues. Privacy issues slightly easier to get into this kind of discussions. So, yeah. So now teleological in the sense like the collection of speech data. I mean, I justify the collection of this speech data, keeping some purpose or a goal in my mind, and that purpose or goal is maybe it is just to satisfy the human requirements. One way to justify the collection of the speech data. So, yeah. So in that sense, the entire range of speech processing phenomena assumes a teleological part. So speech is collected, processed, and released for some purpose. So if the purpose is in there, then there's no point in that. There's no point in any kind of a speech processing. It's like speech processing in itself. I'm not sure whether it is adding any value. It is to satisfy certain human requirements. So now, yeah. So now with regard to the so one thing what we could say is the processing of speech data is only acceptable only to the extent that the processing avoids both input and output confined ethical issues. So again, not a big point or I mean what is trivially implicitly what we understand about the phenomenon. I'm just making it essence. Okay. Now, so we will discuss this maybe. Now the question comes, so deontology or utility. So how to justify? I mean, if we focus on collection of the data, how would we be able to justify maybe the entire use of speech technology? Would it be based on some utilitarian framework, or would it be based on some deontology? So whether it is morally justified or not, and whether it has an impact on the technology itself is a different question. But in general, what framework could one use? Yeah.
Probably deontology. I mean, I'm saying it with a reason, right? So basically, right? I mean, like the purpose of any research, for instance, right? It's kind of trying to push the boundary so that it can be useful in the longer run basically. So, I mean, collecting, understanding, and processing the speech data, right, will serve a greater purpose in the longer run. So probably.
So that's utilitarian.
That's what utilitarian. So rule based. I mean, like
Okay.
utilitarian.
Rule utilitarian.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyone else? Maybe you could consider one of the. So the question is very extremely general. Which one could be? So maybe like speech data, you could consider, collection of the speech data.
I think deontology might be more useful for the data collection because, like, when you look at this greater good of the maximum people, what kind of good are we, hoping people to have? It's. I feel like it's better to have like specific do's and don'ts. Like always protect personal data. Like no matter like if that's going to help. A lot of people get like really good access to or like really good some facility. Is it all right to compromise your personal privacy if it will give like some better facilities for like a lot of people? I feel uncomfortable with that kind of an arrangement. So I think deontology could be useful in protecting people and their privacy and their data to an extent. Otherwise, it's easier to sort of manipulate and twist it and use it to make money or like I don't know. So
You would consider both. Okay. You can take that.
To consider both of them before we do some action, we take an action. We have to like think what will be the consequences going to come before taking action.
So one thing is both is like mutually exclusive. This deontology and consequences. I would be in a position to accept some of the assumptions of deontology.
Yeah, just a face of like two coin two faces. We have to be considered something like this and something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe.
So there.
I want to ask, so if we apply the deontological view to collecting speech data, and so deontology, from your slide, I gather that it implies that collecting speech data has privacy and has the potential for privacy violations, but don't people like take consent forms? Don't people sign consent forms before they give up their speech data? So. I don't understand what the problem with applying the deontological view to data collection is.
So one thing is the collection of the very speech data itself. Now, even after taking consent, would a deontologist say that it is okay that I have taken the consent? No. And therefore, there is no issue with collecting speech data, any data. It's difficult for the deontologist to.
also
justify. It is so because, yeah.
I also think when you take consent, you don't take consent for everything that you're going to do with this. You're taking an umbrella consent, and mostly people don't understand what they are consenting to. Maybe like an engineer or a data scientist understand what they are consenting to, but like a normal person might not really know what they just agreed to. So that epistemic opacity is there. Like you don't understand the technology that you're using. You don't understand the what you're agreeing to also. So there is that problem. You're not going and taking consent from, okay, if you actually list out the things that you could potentially do with the data that you are accessing, people, a lot of people might not consent. You use technical words and like umbrella consents you take. I don't think that, counts as.
What if we tell them precisely what we are going to be using it for and do only that as ethical experts?
I didn't.
What if we explain to them precisely what we will be using the data for, and we, let's say, do everything as honestly as possible, see, what if we tell them we'll take your data, we'll do precisely this, and this, and we do precisely that, and we make sure that they understand it through, by testing their comprehension. Like we do everything to make sure that they understand what their data is being used for. Will it still be wrong?
I don't think the question was about whether, it won't be like.
No, will it still be against a deontologist's point of view? That's
Might be. If there is a rule that says like you can't be, if there is a rule that says that you cannot use, a person's private information, then whether or not this person consents to it, it would be wrong if you're following deontology. It doesn't matter like, it's just that like, are you like violating the rule or not?
No, but in existence there are no rules. I mean, among a group of people. So like among a group of people, so we have to like come to a decision about whether deontology is a valid way of data collection or not.
Yeah, that's a different question. So I was saying like deontology is better because the practicalities of it, like it's practically impossible to go to every person. So for example, like you take self-driving car. The only way in which a self-driving car can function is constantly collecting visual and auditory data from the surroundings. So how are you going to go like every person on the road like asking for consent? Can I collect your data? It's not possible. So it's
no, but but what about speech? I mean, people. I mean, okay, that may be an extreme
speech.
example.
Like, let's say self-driving cars will be collecting auditory data, right?
So like a few months ago, we did this Lambani data collection thing where, I'm not talking about specifically about self-driving cars. That may be like some very extreme example, but like we'll be doing data collection soon, right? I mean, us, IT Harvard. So, like what we do is we gather a bunch of people who speak Lambani, and then we get them to sign consent forms. So, like if we go by the deontological way of data collection, if we go by the deontological ethics of data collection, do you think that would be a valid way of applying? Do you think that would be a valid philosophy to apply?
Yes, because let's say you collected this data from 20 people in a community, and let's say there are 2 crore people in that community, and then you somehow convince that just 20 people that we will use your data to build something, but that might affect that 2 crore people not so good. Now you have the consent of all the people involved in this 20 in your study, but you're still using a personal data that is relevant to another 2 crore people. So it's tricky, right? Like you technically have the consent to use the data, but if you have an umbrella rule that says like you can't use certain data in a certain way, then it will actually protect the people, the other 2 crore people also.
Okay, but if you don't mind, true about anything that you do, right? So anything that you do is bound to affect someone negatively. So you have to like minimize the negatives and maximum. So like even if you breathe right now, you'll be killing microbes. Or like
Yes,
even
but
if you eat like
see, that kind of, that is a very fallacious argument. That is...
no, I mean, but the thing is the extension of this
No,
may be
that is
valid.
not, it's just like saying, like, if I wake up in the morning, I'm harming somebody. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a very specific thing.
Yeah,
Can we apply this method in this study? Why not? Right? So, this is why not. The ontological approach is more useful because it will categorically protect certain personal rights of people. Now, like, if you talk about, but somehow we will end up harming. Of course, we will end up harming. These are the ways in which you make sure you minimize the consequences. You minimize the harmful effects. One of the ways is like you put categorical rules that says you cannot use this data in a certain way. Is one of the ways in which you make sure that you minimize the harm.
okay, I don't know if I got this correctly, but does the deontological view of speech data collection absolutely like prohibit data collection like completely, or is it like
No, that's what, like there is no set
I-
deontological rules. Now, before you start the study, you only set the rules. So it's like for every study, the study only set the rules. It's not like there exists a deontological set of rules that you go ascribe to. So deontology basically says you use your reason to understand, to set rules. How do you set rules? That's what he was talking about. Like the one way is like you see if you universalize this, would it lead to any kind of contradiction or not? Another thing is like if you are in the same situation, would you want to be treated like that? So there are certain there are certain markers that you use to set the rules. So for your specific context, you only set the rule. It's not like there exists a rule that you...
Yeah, so maybe now the question would be like the very activity of collection of a speech data or any data. That very act itself could it be justified? I think that's what using the ontology. That's what you are asking. Yeah, so okay, yeah. So could we justify the very act of data collection itself? Now, the deontologist. My view would be it's not because any act of data collection would reduce the humans into some instruments. So it's quite difficult to see that how the deontologist could justify this. One who accepts the categorical moral reasoning. For them, I mean, anything that has anything that reduces humans into some instruments is unacceptable. So.
But we are not using people, we are using the data as
Okay, so the data belongs to. So suppose I have a my speech is being collected by, let us say, some. My data, especially my speech data, is collected by, let us say, by some of the engineers or maybe anthropologists. Now, it essentially belongs to.
And you can sell it. You can sell it. You can choose to transfer the...
Yeah, so that's an issue. I mean,
if you have the absolute authority over that, then you have also the freedom to choose what to do with it.
so suppose if I were to go with the categorical moral reason, they wouldn't accept it, because even if it is my own data, I mean, though I have the complete authority on that, even then, if the very act itself is something reducing myself to some instruments, so through, of course, it is a data and it's a speech data. Now whether speech data is
If I use my land, can I use my voice as I use my land? If it's all right to use my land as as something that is transferable and I can use that, why not my voice
so.
or my thoughts?
So are we then talking about some property rights over my?
Something like that, yes. I mean, it will probably eventually get there. But I was asking, like, and it's when I treat this like, it's the data that we are using, right? Like, it's not the human being. So some surveys, the human beings get reduced as yes, but if I am, if it's a very I'm just trying to understand. If I consent to give my speech, and then like if I consent to read out certain lines or like act out a role, and then there is the survey and there is this thing. So there, I am not being used, right? I am giving something. Whatever I am giving, that is being used, right?
I think yes. So I think slowly to get into.
Speech technology.
Yeah. Maybe tomorrow we'll be discussing on this.
Yes. So some issues or concepts to discuss.
Speech technology, huge database is essential first. Whatever the application we are developing, huge database is required. So definitely we have to collect data from large group of people, and it is essential to protect their identity. Ultimately, what we are doing is we are developing an application. So to validate the application, I need a large amount of data, and I have to protect the secrecy of the data. Suppose if I do not protect secrecy of the data, so that data can be used for mimicry. So people may use it and they may fake it. So they may do some other wrong technology can be used to bluff the people or cheat the people. So therefore, in every speech technology, to validate a technology which is developed, we need a huge database. So we have to collect the data from different groups of people with different accents, with different dialects and different language we have to collect. We have to protect the secrecy of the data. It is a primary rule, we have to do that. And ultimately what we are doing is we are developing a system which is robust. So that it can be used in real time.
Okay. I think slowly that will get into.
I also second what he has said. The problem happened, the large portals stole the data. So then this deontology will come. If you are paying people and collecting their data, people are giving their information in TikTok and all that, and now say today's seminar, it will be posted in YouTube. I will send a scraper and I will capture your voice. Okay, I build an application on that. Science is about what? Openness and for utilitarianism.
So that will not
Development of science is
that won't be a very successful application. Because
So what is happening is people started stealing the data, which is wrong. Both in utilitarianism as well as in deontology, stealing the data is wrong. Okay, so yes, you should not steal the data, but scientific development, as he said, has to happen. So how? Go in the right way and collect the data. Then you cannot say that collection of data from individuals is wrong. They have consented, like what she said, they have consented to give their voice, and you are using it for a specific purpose.
Okay.
Okay, and that will
should be alright for
that should be all right, isn't it? So people should not, when they start with the research, especially what is OpenAI, Google, whatever, they stole the data. In the name of scientific research, they stole the data. So that is what is should not happen. That's what now everybody is talking. That's why you see in the US they banned TikTok. Earlier also they banned many other apps. And China banned Google. Right? Because they were collecting all the data, privacy issues were compromised, they were saying. So that's valid, that's really valid. So misuse of data is what people are really bothered about. It's not about utilization of data, misuse of data.
So I was specifically concerned with how, which of these frameworks could be more suitable in the context of any of these technologies. So, yeah. So any other, somebody from there? Any other opinion? Yes, I think slowly it gets into the very nature of the privacy itself. Now, suppose if I were to say that right to privacy is something that is intrinsically is to be protected, then I think the deontologists might not justify the collection of any kind of data in the sense that humans could be reduced to some instruments. So then the question comes like speech data. Is it distinct in the sense that is essentially that we have that feeling that it essentially belongs to the person. Now, yeah, is it just mere some property in the sense like I have other properties upon which I have complete control. Now, is it something similar to that, or privacy, is it something that is to be protected irrespective of anything else? So then, yeah, I'm also confused there, like which, whether the deontologists would be okay with saying that, yeah, we can, even with the consent, we can collect the speech data. Then for utilitarianism, what would be your take, opinion? So in a utilitarian framework, I think it's quite straightforward. Like, look at the utility of the technology and then decide the adoption of it. Yeah. So, any other response? Online, yeah. So, those who have joined online, any questions?
Would you mean by maximizing the utility over here? Purpose maximizes the utility, then speech recognition activity is ethically justified. So, when you say maximize the utility, is that like monetary or like social? What is meant?
Well-being of humans as a whole, not just monitoring.
Okay. So, I think like even if you gather speech data, like it's without consent, but if you but if let's say it benefits the whole society,
That's
that would be utilitarianism. Is that?
that's similar discussion we had. Like there you are violating the fundamental rights. So that very approach itself could be wrong. The approach that I'm okay, or it's okay to violate others' fundamental rights. In the long run, that won't bring any utility. It would affect the utility.
Okay.
So privacy concerns, if it is taken into account, like if I say that it's okay to violate the privacy just for the overall utility, actually it is not going to maximize the utility in the long run.
So, what if you consider utility in like a short span of time? So, like, would that be, like, for example, let's say ChatGPT in like right now it's pretty useful, but perhaps in the next 1,000 years we'll probably have smaller brains because of it. I don't know. But like, do you think ChatGPT from a utilitarian perspective is successful?
I'm not sure about it.
I'm just wondering.
I don't know.
I think maybe so in economics we have this idea of marginal utility, and we also accumulate utility over like a period of time. Like, so perhaps utility could be looked at in a more sophisticated way. I think the definition would be more clear.
So maybe
so many speech databases available publicly. In public domain, there are so many standard speech databases available. Say, for example, L06 speech database available publicly. We can use it for research work. Standard. There is no restriction at all. So, but some of medical data is not available, so we have to take permission from the authorities, and then we have to use it. So that is how the people are working in speech technology area. Primarily, we have to protect the secrecy, privacy of the subject who is giving the data. That we should. But there are so many classical speech databases available online. So if I take it, I'm using it. But I never came to know who are the subjects.
so
Because they are not disclosed.
so would that be okay? Is it generally accepted? It is generally accepted.
So it's true that there's lots of classical databases around, and in speech we haven't seen like big problems with that. But in image processing there was this megaface kind of database which had billions of faces, and it was finally removed because people felt that it was unethical. And I think also that in speech area we need to start to think more about the old databases that can be kept alive, or should we just remove them? When our understanding of the ethical consequences improves, we might have to stop using some of the old databases. And even if they appear now like they are protected and you cannot find the identities, is that enough? No, that's something we need to discuss in the community.
I can hear.
In the image processing domain, there is a website called This Face Does Not Exist. There's a website which says this face does not. They are able to generate faces, GAN and related things. There is technology now able to generate faces of people, imaginary people who don't really exist, but they can very realistically generate images of faces. So what I was pointing out is maybe we will soon come to this, using Gen AI, may soon be able to generate databases, so-called synthetic or fake, whatever, synthetic data, voice data that may realistically be substituted for this real speech data collected. Just thinking, wondering. Because Gen AI technology is progressing so fast and so rapidly, we soon reach there where we don't no longer have to collect speech data.
Yes, but the Gen AI methods have been made from speech data, and also they are kind of methodological problems there. They tend to average, so you get the average version, so that 3.7%, which we talked about yesterday, that comes out, not the whole diversity of it. So that's it. So it's a good tool, but not the whole answer.
I think we'll, yeah, now it's time for lunch. So at 2 o'clock we'll meet.